Gelmemiş oluyor. Şeyini değiştirmiş. Bayağı tekrar yapıştırmış. Yok, hayır. Ben de dedim ki demek ki iş var.
Are you doing an introduction or am I? Perfect. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to this session about quality and strategic retrospectives. There's just a couple of more people coming in, but we'll start slowly. So what I'm going to cover today is a topic that I'm quite thrilled about and which I haven't really done much talking or heard much about in recent time, and that's how we link our retrospectives and our whole process improvement to quality, of course, very much in an agile context, but even if we're not in an agile project or organization. So I'd like to just take a brief look at what are retrospectives, then get some input from you guys on how it works in your companies and how you see the situation with regards to quality and retrospectives and the usefulness of retrospectives to improve quality. And then I'm going to talk about the topic strategic retrospectives and explain how it differs from what you might call normal retrospectives, and also what experiences I had when I worked with a company in Denmark called Alka, and how I think there could be a good way for us to help our teams and organizations improve our quality through the retrospective process and put a little bit more emphasis on it with the help of a small, you can say, structured process and some good questions. A few tips on how to introduce it and then concluding remarks. Any questions to that? Remember, T-shirt for the best question today. So take your time and ask questions whenever you like. You might get a T-shirt out of it. All right, good. So if we look at retrospectives in what some of you might think of as a normal context, we're talking agile. And here are the purpose of what is it we normally want to achieve when we do retrospectives. So we want to understand what went well, and that's in a broad context, not just outputs, outcomes, but people and relationships and tools. We want to understand and identify these major items that we can improve on. And of course, we also want to see that we get a plan done, so it's not just us talking, that we actually improve. Now, people who are not using agile methodologies, they still do retrospectives. It's not something that just came with agile. That's something we've been doing for many, many years. In projects, sometimes it would be at the end of the project, and in other times it might have been as we go along, because projects earlier on were usually also quite long in duration. So it would sometimes be good to have a stop in the middle and just reflect on how are things going. Oh, that was a question from the audience here. Good to see. I guess not. No, just kidding. So that was just very briefly. I assume you're all aware of retrospectives and their general purpose, so I'm not going to dwell on that for long. I don't know, my clicker needs me closer on. And the whole idea here is to say, because in retrospectives we take a holistic view on what we do, what we achieve, therefore there are many different aspects we can affect with our retrospectives. So you can also say quality, there is a lot of different types of qualities, or kinds of quality, product quality, process quality, etc. So there are many aspects where we can talk about improving quality. And I find that retrospectives is one of the places where we, in one setting, can actually touch upon all of them without it being out of place, so to speak. So it's a really good opportunity, I find, to actually get to nail down some of these things. Good, so now we come to the point where we would like to know more about your team and project, just to find out a feel for you guys in the room here, how you see the situation. So I'll kindly ask you to take out your smartphones, if you have one, especially if you're connected to Wi-Fi or have data on it, and then go to this URL called menti.com. It will ask you to enter a code, which will take you into a survey where I have prepared a couple of questions. And the idea is just to see a bit about how is the situation with your teams in your companies, and get a feel for where we might take this talk as all. Yes, definitely. So the first question I'd like you to answer is basically about which type of methodology your team or project uses. And again, I'm doing 2 or 3 main categories. Sort of, yes, we're doing agile. We're not talking perfect agile or something like that. We are primarily using classic waterfall methodologies, or we do a good mix of these. Perfect. And I'm just gonna let the, seems to be, again, a bit of popcorn, people coming on. Now, the second question, I hope you now see on your phone, is about how often you do retrospectives in your team or project. So again, if you're an agile team, think of that. If you're in a project, think of that. If you're combined, then you can combine the two if you have in both places. So it's just to get a feel for actually how often do we actually use retrospectives in our processes. On an ad hoc basis would be whenever we feel the need for it. It could be quite frequently, but it could also be almost never. And the other ones are a little bit more on cadence. Now, some people are part of several teams, or maybe several projects. So think about yourself now. If you are part of a project where you do retrospective, and maybe you are part of a community of practice where you also use retrospectives, how often actually are you in a retrospective session? And I can see the scale can be hard to read in the sense that maybe several times per week, once per every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, once or twice per quarter, or maybe less than once a quarter. And now the final and very, very important aspect related to the topic today is about how often do you feel that your retrospective results in improvements? Actual tangible improvements to the way you work, and you can think broadly, like I showed you the wheel before. It's a product quality, process quality, tools, organization, structures. And again, I mean, it's not supposed to be very scientific. It's just sort of based on your gut feeling. What do you think? Awesome. Let's have a look at it. So, it looks like that, fortunately, at least 50 respondents, 52, have quite frequently that you get improvements out of your retrospectives, which is really, really good. There are a good handful of people where I guess that you can count the hours you are in retrospectives and would probably classify it as waste. And then there are still 31 where you would probably be inclined to do the same for quite a lot of your retrospectives. Now, I just want to drill back a little bit on the other questions to get a feel for how it should distribute. So we can see that most of us are either in hybrid or agile environments. There are some of us who are working primarily with classic waterfall, but it's definitely not because most of you are in classic waterfall that the numbers look the way they do. And as I would anticipate, is definitely once per iteration would be the most likely one. And then some on ad hoc basis, very good as well. And also less than once per iteration. Because again, some people have iterations of a week's duration. So maybe you don't need a retrospective every week. Maybe you just need it every second week. Or however your situation is. And we can see that there are some people who are quite frequently in retrospectives, but it is most once per 2 weeks. Like maybe you have 2 week sprints, or you have longer sprints, but you do it every 2 weeks. So that was just to get a feel for where you are and how you see the value of retrospectives in your organization. Because that's what I gather sometimes, that we have some challenges. We do it a lot. We conduct a lot of retrospectives, which is great because that's a whole learning and feedback loop. But often we have challenges. Often we have situations where, as some of you indicated, it doesn't result in improvements. So basically we spend a lot of time talking, and for some reason it doesn't materialize into improvements at all. So here are just some of the things that I have noticed could be reasons why we are actually not getting as much out of it as we could do. Any of those that resonate with you, or which you recognize for your own situation? So which ones do you think is the most? The third one. Lots of talking, very little action. Yes. That's what I'm also seeing a lot. Lots of talking. Sometimes even the same topic over several retrospectives, and still, yes, we should do something. We talk about the same thing next time. Yes, we should do something, and nothing happens. Right. So let's move on and see strategic retrospective. How is that going to change this trend? What is this going to do different than you're doing today to make the situation better? Sorry. I either need to stand here, or, okay, I'll come back and click when I need to click instead. So, the purpose of these strategic retrospectives is to give you a different context, a bit of more structure, to actually take what you do and make sure it becomes actionable items. But it's not just about talking, because often when we talk, we have a feel. We all have an opinion about this went well, or this went well, or this didn't go well because I think such and such. So we have not the same understanding of how we do as a team, and we don't have data to base it on, and therefore our discussions can seem a little bit like, I feel like we should be doing that, but do we have an idea if that's going to help? Actually, we don't. So, therefore, by having a little bit more structure and methodology around it, we can focus what we're going to focus on, we can qualify why we do it, and we can also, which I think is extremely important, take our feedback and use it to discuss with our leaders what is it we need your help with to change. Because otherwise, a lot of things we can do ourselves, but there's also a lot of things where we need our leaders' help to do structural changes. And that's an important thing which often do not come out of retrospectives. That's an output that leaders can take and help you make your life easier in the organization. And I think that's where a strategic view on it can help tremendously. So this is not to replace what you're doing already. This is to build upon it, but to also look at the things that are bigger. The small things you can do in a tactical retrospective, but bigger issues are hard to solve within 2 weeks. And then you might not have a good way to make this continuous effort to get it done. So if we look at it, how frequently will we do this? If we take a normal timeline, you'll have your team iterations, and then you might have some people will call it an increment, some people will call it maybe a business milestone or something significant, but a number of sprints leading up to something bigger potentially. And then we would have our strategic retrospective at the end of the longer period. So you would do tactical retrospectives in each iteration like you would normally do, and then at the end of a larger point, you will do a strategic one. So many teams would do it maybe once a quarter, or every 5 iterations. That would be a normal frequency for having strategic retrospectives to basically sum up over that period. Now what you do is basically you have an assessment where you actually make sure you get an understanding of where does each of your members feel they are on various aspects of your team processes and performances, and how you actually act as a team. The next thing is, of course, to get this in and do some analysis of it. So have a way to present it in a way that makes it easy to pinpoint out where is it we agree, where is it we disagree. Because often it's not just that we think we are good at something or we think we're bad at something. Where we often have bigger problems is where we are misaligned. So some of us think we do great, and some of us think we actually suck at it. And that actually makes it difficult to get to some improvement items, because some people will say, we have no problem. And others will say, well, this is like, we are on the road to over the edge of the world here, and we need to do something. So getting alignment on what is it we think is really good and bad can help get the effectiveness of our retrospective up so we can focus. And then, of course, finally, we need to have growth items. We need to have a focus on what is it we want to improve, but not just what do we want to improve, why do we want to improve it? What will it make different if we do this? How will that change what we do and how we do it in a positive manner? And this is where quality, and I think us as a testing community, we have a lot to contribute. Because this is where we can tell and link what quality actually does for our performance as a team, for our clients, for the output that we bring, and build that in. So give it a focus. And the last thing about organizational growth items, these are the ones we tell our leaders, yes, we have some impediments, or yes, we have some potentials in our organization, but without your help, we cannot realize them. So we need you to do something to help us perform better. Any questions so far? Remember t-shirt? Yes?
Can I have a t-shirt?
Yes! That was the first question, because I'm not sure the question has to be related to the topic. So the question was, can I have a t-shirt? Awesome, new question. Or should we have a microphone? How many t-shirts have you gotten so far? Yes?
Hi. So who exactly and how defines the this survey and questions inside it to feel the team?
Yes, good question. So you can, of course, sit down in your team or in your organization and say, what's important for us? What do we think is important for us to give a good team performance? There are other solutions, surveys available. people have put stuff out where they recommend what you should look at as a team. In the case I'm going to present, we used a platform called AgilityHealth, which has predefined questions based on a lot of different companies and various agile methodologies. So no specific one, just agile in general. So you can do it in different ways, and I'll actually come back to that a bit later on. But good question. All right, so we did a case in an insurance company in Denmark called Alka, where we tried this method out for one team. And I just want to summarize a bit about what we achieved there and what it showed us. Because they were working quite well with Agile, not for too long, but they were performing quite well. They felt it was going pretty good. And they wanted to improve still, but again, they felt a little bit stuck in this churn of, yes, we're doing retrospectives, but nothing new comes out of it. So it could also be good to have a little bit of an external view outside in. So that's where me and my colleague came into the picture. And then they had a Scrum Master who was fairly new in the role, so also needed maybe a little bit of assistance to get inspired of what can we do next with our team. So we did a process in a pilot fashion, so we got the whole thing started up, and also with the questions and with the team, you need to find out who is going to participate in your team and get that organized and make sure the team understands what are the questions, how we're going to answer it, and so on and so forth, so that it's all prepared. Now, the slide we looked before with the strategic retrospective, that's just this box up here, where you actually get your data together with the questionnaire. You have your session where you analyze the data, and you get your growth items out of it. Now, the next steps are where you actually do the debriefing with leaders. And this is where you actually say to your leaders, these items, we are in need of help. And if you do this, not just with one team, but across several teams in your organization, then that can show leaders' trends. Also, where do we need to focus as leaders to help the biggest amount of our teams right now? So not only do you as a team get a focus, the whole organization with your leaders get aligned upon what is it we need to change now to get the improvements we need going forward. Make sure this runs, so we did it again, also because we are after growth, we are after improvement and quality improvements. So having one snapshot just gives you a picture, but it doesn't show you what is the effect of what we do. Now, this is what it came out with for the team. So with this platform, they do have, as you can see, 5 dimensions with X number of questions. Again, you can make your own, and I'll come back to that later on. But it does show how do the team think on average they're performing in different aspects of what they do. And that gives you the possibility to have a conversation about where are our weaknesses and strengths, and how can we actually focus our attention on a more continuous basis to supplement our normal sprint retrospectives to actually improve our quality. Now, again, they would identify the most important topics. We split them up. I mean, it's an agile team, so you have like, 7, 8, 9 people in 2 groups to discuss. And I think that's an important part as well, because sometimes you sit in a group and you discuss all sorts of things. So here you pick from your data what are the topics we need to discuss first and foremost, and then you sit in smaller groups and work with the topic and try to find out why is it like this? Why are we not agreeing? What is it we think is not happening here? And also, what is it we need to do or to change so we can get to the bottom of this? So in that sense, because you have a little bit more time here, you can do a more in-depth analysis of your situation. And I think that's also hard sometimes if you have a retrospective in a team. You might do it for 50 minutes or maybe even a half an hour, which doesn't allow you to do much digging. Now, in the first retrospective, they wanted to actually work with the effectiveness of their retrospectives. And that's basically back to what you also showed, some of you in the beginning. Yes, we do retrospectives, but we don't get much improvement out of it. So it's waste. Either we stop doing retrospectives, or we actually get them to work. And they had the same thing here. And again, the Scrum Master being new, probably also needed a little bit of help to see how can I make this much more effective? How can I become an effective facilitator? So they focused on doing that, but it was not just the Scrum Master, but it was the whole team defining what is it we are going to do over the next 3 months to improve our skills and our effectiveness in this, so our retrospectives actually become effective, that we can use them to improve other parts of what we do. So the whole idea about using questions, qualitative measurements, is again that you can evaluate to say, are we making a change? Because sometimes, yes, I do believe in gut feeling, because I think we as people have a very advanced instrument in our body to actually notice if things are changing for the better or worse. But sometimes it's also good with a bit of quantifiable data to back it up and to actually see if it's going in the right way. So this also gives you a platform to make sure that your retrospectives actually brings the value that you want them to do, or you can do something about it, change the format, get rid of them, whatever you need to actually make things effective. So, what that team said is they liked a structured method that would actually point to some of the problems they had a gut feeling existed, but showing it black and white like that helped them actually having conversations about it. They also wanted to make sure they all got engaged. So the Scrum Master was a team member that day, so I was helping them facilitate, and therefore it was a whole team effort. So it's not about the Scrum Master having to do something between the first and the second strategic retrospective. The whole team took ownership. We together need to improve. And then they had tried another agile maturity assessment, which is sort of the first part to find out where are we and do we agree. And they compared the one I showed you to more concrete actions. So that is basically my point. It's the concreteness of your plans that comes out of it that's key, that they're actually actionable items you do follow up on. So, any questions? We still have, I think, we've only had 2, and I think, was it 3 questions, or what was it we wanted to have, so we could pick the best? There's a question over.
The question is, should our leaders take part in our retrospective together with the team? Or it should be in 2 different events? I mean, because leaders have some impact on the team, and actually when we have retrospectives with our leaders, it's not so effective as it could be, I think. But obviously our leaders think another way. So the question is, what we should do with our leaders.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit like children. You can't choose them because they chose you, but with children to parents, you get the parents you get. In this way, what I would recommend here is definitely the team retrospective is a team retrospective. And since the leader is not sitting on your team every day and doing everyday teamwork, they don't need to participate. In fact, they should not participate. If they ask if they like to participate, the answer is no, but there will be a debriefing session with them. And I think that is key, because this is a session for the team, and it's a session where the team members can speak open and honestly with each other to actually get to the difficult questions. Because we can all fix the easy ones. That's not what brings us forward. It's the difficult ones we want to be able to openly discuss, and leaders often, unfortunately, do not have a good, The environment changes when the leader is present, and that's usually not healthy for those kind of discussions. Because, of course, we should be able to discuss with our leaders how we fail, because we want to fail fast so we learn. So if we have a no failure culture, well, how are we going to learn? Because we're not going to fail. But often people feel that if my leader hears this did not go well, or we are not feeling well here or something, that is not going to be to my benefit long term. So I think it's a very good question. I'm glad you asked it. Definitely.
Hello, and to follow up the previous speaker, I would like to ask you about the ethical aspect of being a Scrum Master.
Yes?
Well, the thing is, if you take your feedback back from the team and you keep the feedback from the leaders, how to combine it so that the team would still feel free on retrospectives to speak out, and they will not consider you to be a spy.
Yes?
And how to provide a ethical and good feedback to your leaders, and so back and forward.
Yeah.
So all the parts of the conversation would feel okay.
And there are several aspects in that. Very good question as well, because I very much want this to be about growth. So what we usually say is, this is not about rewarding or punishing. This is about learning and become better. The way we do our team surveys here, people are anonymous. So you can see the different responses, but you can't see who did it, except there is a little spy for the PO, because there's one question where the PO will stand out. Also getting feedback from your leaders, because I actually think that's important, that the leaders give you feedback in. So when you have your team retrospective, it's not just what you think internally, but it's also how is it perceived by stakeholders, by your leaders, because that can be valuable input to your own improvement process. And then coming back to actually getting the leaders informed in the debriefing, that's where it's often important in the beginning to have a neutral facilitator. So again, it will be the neutral facilitator who will actually do the debrief, and it will be on the summarized results. Plus, it will be on the growth items the team has identified together. This is what we would like to talk with the leaders about. So the team has said, what is it we want to have a conversation about? So I think that gives a balance between having feedback between both, but also giving space to both to be open and honest in a trustful environment.
So it's just a matter of terminology. We don't call it drawbacks, we call it feedback and
No, you can call it
growth
problems
items.
or bombs or whatever you like to call it.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, I mean, impediments, you can call it, you can grade it whatever you like. You can say, this is our burning platform, or that's up to you. I think what is important is, again, of course, to understand, we see it like this, and we think this is hugely, immensely critical that you do something about. Narrow it down to 1 or 2 items, because again, if you come with a wish list of 200 items, nothing is going to happen. And that's where the criticality comes in, that first you as a team agree, this is critical for us. Then it's so much easier to get your leaders on board and for them to understand, why is this, what is it I need to do? So it's not about wrapping things nicely necessarily, but I don't think there's no reason either to use swear words and stuff like that. I don't think that is going to improve the communication and the results.
Okay, thank you.
So, yes?
Wait.
Okay. And second question, should we have some rules maybe on these retrospectives? Like, if we say that we have some problem and all team agree with this, should we create, for example, user story? Just like in time we understand that this is a problem. Or we can say, let's create a list, then we can analyze this list, then we can imagine what we can do with this list and maybe create a user story and so on. So what about disciplines on these retrospectives? Should it be hard and maybe we can imagine some punishment for not following this discipline, or it's just about understanding of what is going on in team?
I think it's a very good point, and I don't believe in punishment like that. So what we do is we explain the team the process, and we also explain the teams with our strategic retrospective, and this is our time box. We want to achieve these things. Then it's of course my responsibility as a facilitator to get the team through the process and get a tangible result. So again, sometimes you don't make it. So one time we did not have a clean-cut growth item at the end of the session, but then I worked with the Scrum Master. So as a team, we had our whole root cause and we knew what we wanted in, but the wording needed some shaping. Fine, no problem in that. We didn't manage to get any organizational growth items in the first session. I don't think that's a huge problem. It was just informing the team next time if you have anything, because that's your opportunity. But they were in a situation where they said, we are in fully control of this, we don't need our leaders' help, so there's no reason for us to create organizational growth items. So again, if you don't need it, don't do it. And I thought that was very healthy that the team said themselves, we feel capable of solving this ourselves. That was, for me, a healthy sign. So again, that's the facilitator job, to help to get the team through. And of course, as you say, to avoid the talking, no action, we need to have growth plans, and we need to put them in the backlog to actually implement them. So of course, there is some support where I also had the box about, talk with the Scrum Master in between the retrospective to make sure you work on this, because it is a longer period, but it's a bigger thing usually. So you will need to work every sprint to actually get your result. Otherwise, you would have just done it in a tactical retrospective in between. Good point.
Yeah, I'm not looking for a T-shirt. You're addressing, actually just following up on what you were saying, is a normal retrospective based on, let's say, an iteration.
Yes.
The actions will be done
Next.
in the next iteration by the team.
Yes.
From a strategic perspective, I can imagine some actions are beyond the scope of a team, or not.
Yes. And they will go to, you can say, if you need other teams to help, you'll of course need to discuss it with them. And that's where often when there is this misalignment then that one team wants something to happen, the other team doesn't have time or whatever, it often becomes something where it needs to go up to the leaders to help create the condition, not just for this team, but for all the teams who need to participate to actually do something together.
Yeah, that was also my second question, because I think in your presentation, if I understood correctly, you're saying strategic perspectives are still within the team, for the team.
Yes.
I can imagine there's also value in doing this on a cross-product level.
Yes, there is. So this is an introduction for teams, but we also do it for, you can say, programs or collection of teams. We even do it for organizations and for portfolios. So we can take the whole, you can say, company view on how we're doing it. But I think a good starting point, and where we as testers and test managers can definitely start, is with the teams and show how this can work. I also think this makes a good wake-up call for the leaders, because the point is now they get some growth items, and as a facilitator I will go in and say, with your leader team, now we're going to start working agile, of course, with them as well, because you need to demo that you have solved these growth items, that you have pulled in yourself. So after the period, you will demo for the teams what you've been doing. I don't know how often your leaders demo for you the improvements that they have done, just like you demo the deliverables you have done. So I think that's a very healthy thing, where the leader starts to get this mindset of they are also in this together with you guys. They understand how you work, and they understand better what you need. So that would be the next step up, definitely. Good question. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I'm not sure how much time we have left. But if you're going to introduce this, I will recommend that you consider, again, if your retrospectives fly, if you have no problems, don't do this, because you don't need it. It's only to solve problems you actually have. So if everything is fine and dandy, just enjoy that you've been mentally relaxed for 40 minutes and you can continue to the next track and get something else that can solve your problems. Also, the number of teams. I think if you're just one team, it's good for yourself, but this method, as we talked about, with adding things up to leaders, is much more effective when you have X number of teams. So 20 teams maybe, 50 teams, or some places have 200 teams, because then it becomes really difficult for leaders to keep the feel with you guys. Because if I'm a manager and have 200 teams, I cannot be in the dailies every day with every team. I can't even attend every demo, because I have 200 teams. Now, I'm not saying that the leader should not come down and talk to you, but this can help them, and it can help you to together communicate much better and align what is it we need, where do we need to go. So, usage of results was back to this about, it's not about punishment, it's not a reward, it's not about salary negotiations. If you take it that way, this is not going to work. Yeah. And I also did a lightweight approach where we collected some questions ourselves, we designed it ourselves, we had a pretty lightweight tool to collect them in, trying to protect anonymity, I can't even pronounce that today. Oh, anyhow, I promised people no one would see their identity, but I could because I was having the admin for the results. But then I had to do some scrambling, and that meant that it was some work. But we did a survey 3 times, so yes, it's definitely doable. And it was easy to get management support for a lightweight method. We can do something here and now, and they could see something. And we got some indications from people, of course, which is nice. But the drawbacks was that I had to do a lot of manual analysis because of the basic surveying method I used, and also that people were answering on an ad hoc basis. So if you do it more structured with, let's say our teams are going to use this, then you are making sure that people actually are getting involved because they're doing it for themselves, not because you want to give some indication to management, because this is about your team's growth. And then I think it was difficult to spot trends because, again, the consistency and the data quality wasn't good. So if you have many teams, then I will recommend that you consider carefully before you launch this. Now, very briefly, this is just one out of several platforms that you can use for this. But again, if you want to do it on a bigger scale, this is one of the solutions and options that are out there. They're called AgilityHealth, created by Agile Transformation, and they are very much supporting both method-wise and also for presenting and making sure your results are stored and handled in an easy way for you. So, getting the quality up, if you have tactical sprint retrospectives, can be difficult with the bigger problems that you might have. But if you do it on a strategic level, you nudge it up a little bit also to look at the bigger picture for us as a team. What does it take for us to move forward? Then I think there's a lot to gain on quality aspects, product, process, people, all the different things can much easier be handled when you have a more strategic retrospective on it. And then, again, the first rule of scaling is, of course, don't scale. And I would say the same for this. Keep it as light as possible for as long as you can. But if you have a lot of teams, then carefully, put some considerations into how you launch this, because otherwise it will not give you the results that you are after. I don't know, I didn't look for your time card, so I don't know how much time we have left. 0? Sorry. So I hope you have no more questions.
I have one.
Okay.
I have one question. Thank you for presentation. I have that question. What exactly happened with the company from the example that they decide to start the pilot project with the strategical retrospectives?
So why they started? Yeah.
What exactly happened that they change the mind from tactical retrospective? It is the best practice in Agile,
yes.
To strategical.
I think it was a combination of both the leaders seeing that they wanted their teams to develop themselves more. So again, this is about self-organizing and actually taking action themselves. They were looking for ways to support that in the processes, but they were also comparing to a methodology that they have used as well, which was much more, you can say, outside in, more like someone comes and does an assessment and then tells the team how should the team improve. And that was not giving the benefits that they were seeking.
They have now the core problem with when it is driver for them or not.
So you said the core problem they knew?
Have they the core problem from what they start?
So they definitely, you can say the whole agile transition they were doing was to get, of course, more productive teams, that they were able to do their digital transformation faster, and that's why they were doing the whole of it. Now, their first agile implementation had taken them some part of the journey.
The speed, yeah?
Sorry?
They want to increase the speed.
Yes. They wanted to continue to develop their teams because they could see this is actually working. How can we do more of this? Because this team is actually now being able to deliver more. Our business partner, who was but who was a little bit skeptical in the beginning, actually turned and saw, well, this really works for me as a business partner as well, so we need to do more of this. So to actually emphasize what the teams were doing, they wanted to improve that. All right, thank you very much.
Do you remember owners of questions?
Yeah, I don't remember all of them, but I think the gentleman over there who came with the leader in or out question. Thank you very much. And yeah, if you have further questions, I'll also be around. So have a good conference. Thank you.